The following segment is sponsored by Smith Injury Law and 300hurt.com.
Workers' comp can be confusing for those of us who are not attorneys. How do you file a claim? What's covered and what's not? Richard Smith of Smith Injury Law is here. Good morning.
Good morning, Margaret.
You cover a lot of the same questions people ask you over and over. We're going to get into some frequently asked questions, but first, give us the general overview. What should an employee do if hurt on the job?
Well, the first thing you do is report the injury right away. I mean, it needs to be reported immediately if possible. Oftentimes, even though you have 90 days technically to report the injury, sometimes people, if they miss it, if they're a day or two late reporting the injury, the employer will deny the claim. So report it immediately. Even if you don't think it's that serious, at least report the injury. You can always, stop treatment, go back to work, don't miss any work, as long as it's not a serious injury. But if you don't report it, you're setting up yourself for some big problems.
Documentation is everything. Now, frequently asked questions. In a workers' comp situation, does the employer get to choose the doctor?
Yes. And that's why it's important. If you report the injury and they set up the claim, always ask to see a doctor. And if they refuse to see you to a doctor or they deny your claim, then you can go to another doctor and deal with those issues later. But you need to give the employer and the workers' comp carrier the opportunity to pick your physician, your doctor. That's what the law says. If you don't do that, you're going to have problems in the case.
All right. What can a workers' comp claimant do if there's a situation where the doctor just doesn't seem like the right fit?
Well, that's why an attorney involved is very important, because we can get involved in the case. I've had cases where I've seen the same doctors that are very known by the plaintiff's bar to be extremely conservative, pro-defense, that we have actually objected to them and indicated we were going to, get a second opinion, do all that kind of stuff. I've gotten workers' comp defense attorneys to change doctors sometimes. Sometimes the adjusters have done that. Just knowing that, hey, we know who this person is, and all we're asking for is fair, objective treatment. We don't want you to pick the worst doctor out there that's the most in the pocket of the insurance company. And sometimes they will agree, okay, we'll pick somebody else and we'll agree on somebody. But if they don't agree, we have ways to combat those types of doctors. We can take their deposition. We have access to their previous deposition testimony in other cases. We all kind of share that information. So we have ways to attack those that are not really objective doctors.
Now, another question you get frequently is, who pays for workers' comp benefits? How does that work?
Well, your employer buys a workers' compensation policy, or they're self-insured. Either way, the funds are set aside for that purpose. So it's not damaging your employer. You're not suing your employer. You're filing a workers' compensation claim under the laws of South Carolina or North Carolina, depending on what state you're in, which determines how much compensation that you receive. So basically, it's like filing an insurance claim, except this can be quite complicated.
What else, if anything, do you think people need to understand about how workers' compensation insurance works before we go?
Well, the first thing to understand is there's a waiting period before you can get a workers' comp check. It's usually 14 days or somewhere in that range. And then you will receive a workers' comp check if you were written out of work by the authorized treating doctor. There can be some issues involved when you are written back to work on light duty and the employer says they don't have light duty. You should also get benefits then. There's some complications arising when a person gets laid off and they claim you're being laid off for another reason besides their injury. So there can be a lot of issues involved in that. But the first thing is to remember that the workers' comp doctor sometimes, and certainly the rehab nurse sometimes, is not looking after the client's best interest. So if you don't pay attention, you can end up having your claim damaged significantly before you ever consult an attorney. And an attorney does not, we don't charge by the hour. We charge a percentage of the settlement approved by the Workers' Compensation Commission. So you never are unable to afford an attorney. And you really should consult one if you have a serious workers' comp injury, especially if it requires surgery or you're going to be out of work any extended period of time.
All right. Well, workers' comp is just the one main area of your practice, but tell us what else you handle at Smith Injury Law.
But we also handle automobile accidents, workers' compensation, as we talked about a minute ago, both in North Carolina and South Carolina. We also do Social Security disability claims as well, and any type of injury claim that you may have. Now, we take very few types of injuries that do not involve a car accident typically, but there are other types of claims out there. So if you have a question, there's always a free consultation. You can always call us at 300-HURT, and we will consult with you. And if it's something we don't handle, we might refer you to somebody that does handle that type of case.